One year when I lived in Atlanta, there was a drought that affected a good chunk of the Southeast. My friends and I stepped up to do our part to use less water. We didn't have lawns to water in our seminary housing, but we all pledged to do things like take shorter showers and only flush the toilet when it was really necessary, if you know what I mean. I also remember from that time that the state of Georgia tried to take things into its own hands by annexing the southern part of Tennessee to gain access to part of one of its rivers. Apparently, this is one of those historical border disputes that crops up every time Georgia suddenly finds itself in need of more water. We're generally lucky enough in this part of the country that a drought is the kind of thing that happens only every once in a while, at least so far. I know out west, it's already become an every year kind of thing. We were talking just before the service about potential water restrictions in Colorado coming up. In any case, if you've ever lived through a drought, you at least have a small glimpse into the beginning of Elijah's prophetic career. We first met Elijah a couple of weeks ago when he announced to Israel's idolatrous King Ahab that a drought was coming. Since then, he's been on the run, since you don't call divine judgment down upon a king without expecting some sort of consequences. Elijah has been taken care of by ravens in the wilderness and by a poor widow in the land of Sidon. By this point, the drought has gotten bad, and far beyond the point of worrying about how often to flush the toilet. Drought has led to famine. And already by last week's reading, Elijah's Sidonian hostess and her son are on the verge of starving to death. But now, after 2+ years without rain, God announces that the drought is about to end. And that means it's time for Elijah's next adventure, because before the rain comes, he has to go back to face Ahab once again. Now, Ahab has been looking for Elijah all this time. When they finally find each other, though, all Ahab really has for Elijah is some angry words. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" he asks. To which Elijah responds, "I'm not a troubler of Israel, you're a troubler of Israel. You're the one who's deserted Yahweh to worship Baal instead." Baal, you may remember, was the Canaanite storm god, the god whose job it was in these cultures surrounding ancient Israel to make it rain. There's one ancient Ugaritic myth from the area just northwest of Israel in which we read, "Let the heavens rain oil, the wadis run with honey. Then I will know that the mightiest Baal lives. The prince, the Lord of the earth, is alive." Now, it was Ahab's worship of Baal that presumably brought this drought on in the first place. But you can imagine that anyone who was a little bit inclined to worship Baal in the first place has probably been worshiping him more and more desperately over these past few years. And that includes not just Ahab, but all of the people over whom he is king. Elijah tells Ahab to gather all of the prophets of Baal and the prophets of the goddess Asherah at Mount Carmel by the sea, and to gather all the people of Israel there as well. Elijah stands in front of this crowd of people and he accuses them. "How long will you hobble back and forth between two opinions? If you're going to follow Baal, follow Baal. But if you're going to follow Yahweh, follow Yahweh." It's kind of like in the book of Revelation, when God tells John of Patmos to write to the church at Laodicea and say, "I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were either cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth." Know where you stand, God says. Make your choice and stake your life on it. But of course, the story of Elijah and Ahab and the prophets of Baal is an old story. I don't think anyone alive worships Baal anymore, and we are probably in little danger of being tempted to do so. We may sometimes have to decide between church and brunch on a Sunday morning, but when it comes to Yahweh versus Baal, at least that one is pretty much settled. We're here. We've made our choice. We don't worship Baal. Except that we worship so many Baals. We worship the Baals of success, of celebrity, of youth, the Baals of financial security, of civil religion where God is made equivalent to America. We worship our history and our institutions. We worship our own privilege and the ideologies we adopt to make sure that we maintain it. We worship ourselves, our dreams, our rightness. As John Calvin once put it, the human mind is a perpetual factory of idols. We worship these things because we choose them. We put them first. We give them highest priority in our lives. We worship these things because they promise to give us what we need. And yet we claim to worship Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus. It's like what Jesus was talking about when he told people in the Sermon on the Mount, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be loyal to the one and have contempt for the other. No one can serve God and wealth. But how long, O people of God, will we hobble back and forth between worshiping God and worshiping all these things that threaten to pull us away? Well, the people gathered on Mount Carmel that day are about to find out exactly what power their idols have. Elijah tells the people to bring him 2 bulls. The 450 prophets of Baal will choose 1 bull and prepare it for sacrifice. And then Elijah will do the same with the other, but neither of them will light the fire for the burnt offering. Instead, the prophets of Baal will call on Baal, and Elijah will call on Yahweh, and everyone will get to see which God answers by sending fire. Essentially here, Yahweh has challenged Baal to a duel. The prophets of Baal go first. They prepare the bull for sacrifice, and they call on Baal's name, and they dance, and they keep going from morning until noon. Nothing. Elijah tells them to talk louder. What's wrong, he asks them. Your God isn't answering? Maybe he is just taking a nap. Maybe he stepped out to lunch. I imagine Elijah leaning back, sipping a glass of lemonade, just throwing shade as their rituals reach fever pitch. Still, Baal doesn't answer. Then it's Elijah's turn. He begins by repairing an altar of Yahweh that was presumably knocked down by worshipers of Baal. He digs a trench around the altar and he asks someone to bring him water. Now remember, we're in a drought. This is probably not among the acceptable limited uses of water, but that's not Elijah's concern right now. Elijah pours the water all over the bull and all over the wood until it overflows into the trenches. His point is clear. It's going to take an act of God to set this thing on fire. That is, of course, exactly what occurs. Elijah prays to God and fire falls from heaven and it burns up the sacrifice and the altar and the dirt and even the water in the trenches. And at this, all the people fall on their faces and say, Yahweh is God. They worshipped Baal because everyone was doing it, because they thought he could give them what they needed. But in the end, our Baals never do. Now the people see that. Does it only count, do you think, if you say it? Or does it count if you only say it after witnessing some sort of fiery miracle from heaven? Are the people forgiven for doubting Yahweh in the first place? If we're honest, I think that we can have some sympathy for them. As someone pointed out in our Bible study last week, we all come to believe in God, not just because someone says the right words or argues their point well enough, but because we experience somehow who God is. It might be a mystical experience, or it might be the example of someone who truly lives differently as a Christian in a way that makes us say, there's something there. In this case, it was fire from heaven. Even doubting Thomas needed to be able to put his hands in Jesus' wounds before he could proclaim, my Lord and my God. And Jesus' response was to let him. What I wonder, though, is how long does it last? How long will these people who fall on their faces now still do that and still proclaim that Yahweh is God? How long will they worship Yahweh alone? Now, spoiler alert, this is hardly the end of Baal worship in the story. So what happens next time when push comes to shove? When you need the promise of someone who can end the drought? What happens when choosing one means sacrificing the other? When you really have to make the choice of who and what you're going to worship? What happens next when everyone around you is turning to Baal and promising that this is where you can find security? This is where you can find abundance. This is where you can find eternal life. Then we hear the call once again. Make your choice and stake your life on it, because it's life itself that is at stake. Elijah's work is done, at least for now. Yahweh is God and Yahweh alone. In the distance, over the sea, rain clouds begin to gather. Amen.